The cream-colored envelope felt heavy in my hands, like it contained more than just paper. The return address belonged to Valentin Rogers, our family lawyer, the man who had watched me grow up while drafting prenups for my perfect sisters and managing our family's pristine reputation. My name is Vanessa, and I'm the daughter they tolerate. I didn't need to open the invitation to know what it was about. Grandpa Julius had passed away 3 weeks ago, and now it was time for the vultures to circle. The family remembrance weekend was just code for dividing his fortune. My phone buzzed. Madison, my cousin, had sent another screenshot from the sister group chat I wasn't included in. Joanna. Can't wait to see everyone this weekend, though maybe someone should remind Vanessa this isn't a casual brunch. Lindsay. LOL, did you see what she wore to the funeral? That vintage dress looked like it came from Goodwill. Mom. Girls, be nice. She's trying her best. I smiled, running my finger along the envelope's edge. They had no idea. The last time I saw Grandpa Julius, he was in his hospice bed, but his eyes still had that mischievous spark. Come here, little rebel, he'd said, patting the space beside him. They won't see it coming. I thought he was delirious from the medication. Now I wasn't so sure. My doorbell rang. A courier stood outside with another envelope, this one marked to be opened after the reading in Valentine's precise handwriting. Sign here, please, the courier said, studying my face. Mr. Rogers was very specific about delivery timing. I signed, trying to keep my hand steady. Did he say anything else? Just that you'd know when to open it. As I closed the door, my phone buzzed again. Madison was calling. They're already here, she said without greeting. Your mom's organizing a pre-reading champagne toast. Let me guess, I wasn't invited to that either. Joanna's showing off her new tennis bracelet. Says it's an early inheritance gift from your mom. I sat down at my kitchen counter, spreading both envelopes in front of me. What else? Lindsay's been practicing her grateful tears. Says she's going to film the reading for her Instagram stories. Madison paused. Van, they've already divided everything up. They assume you'll get the minimum required by law to avoid contest. Perfect. I traced Grandpa's signature on the formal invitation. That's exactly what I want them to think. What are you planning? Nothing they'll expect. I checked my watch. I should go. Need to pick out something appropriately disappointing to wear. Vanessa. Madison's voice softened. Remember that Christmas when Aunt Deborah announced your sister's engagements? You mean when Mom told everyone I was finding myself while Joanna and Lindsay showed off their rings? No, I mean when you left early and Grandpa Julius followed you out. What did he say? I closed my eyes, remembering his warm hand on my shoulder in the cold parking lot. He said sometimes the best revenge is letting people think they've won. And? And that he was proud I never pretended to be someone I wasn't. Madison went quiet. The reading's at 3 tomorrow. Don't be late. Oh, I wouldn't miss this for anything. After hanging up, I stared at the sealed envelope from Valentin. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind my family used for wedding invitations and birth announcements. All those milestone moments I'd failed to provide. My phone lit up with a text from Mom. Please wear something appropriate tomorrow. The photographer will be there. Of course, there would be a photographer. Heaven forbid we divide an inheritance without proper documentation for the country club newsletter. I picked up the sealed envelope again, feeling its weight. Whatever Grandpa Julius had planned, he'd made sure I had front row seats to it. The man who taught me to play chess when my sisters were learning etiquette, who funded my art classes while they attended debutante balls, had left me one final move. Another text buzzed through, Lindsay this time, sent to me by accident instead of the sister chat. Can you believe she's actually coming? As if she deserves any of it after embarrassing us all these years. I smiled, thinking of the manila folder hidden in my desk drawer. 15 years of screenshots, recordings, and receipts, every loan they'd forgotten to repay, every backhanded comment at family gatherings, every time they'd used my failure to launch as dinner party entertainment. Oh, I'm coming, I whispered to my empty apartment. And I'm bringing receipts? I stood up and walked to my closet, pushing past the designer hand-me-downs they'd given me out of pity. In the back hung a black dress, simple, elegant, and completely my own. Tomorrow, I'd wear it to watch their perfectly curated world unravel. Grandpa Julius was right. They wouldn't see it coming. I arrived 15 minutes late to find champagne glasses already clinking in the mansion's marble foyer. Through the floor to ceiling windows, I could see Joanna holding court by the pool, her tennis bracelet catching the afternoon sun. Oh, you made it. Mom's voice carried that familiar note of disappointment. She air kissed my cheek, careful not to smudge her lipstick. Everyone's already here. I noticed. I gestured to the champagne. Started without me? Well, we weren't sure you'd come. You know how you are with family obligations. Before I could respond, Lindsay's voice rang out. Look who finally showed up. She floated over in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. We were just talking about Grandpa's diamond collection. You remember the necklace he promised me? Which one? I asked innocently. The one you told him you loved or the one you actually pawned last year? Her smile flickered. I have no idea what you're talking about. Of course not. I reached for a champagne flute. Just like you had no idea about that loan I gave you for Randolph's gambling debt. Keep your voice down, she hissed, glancing around. This isn't the time or place. Is it ever? Madison appeared at my elbow, rescue written all over her face. Van, come see the new garden room. They've redecorated. She steered me away from Lindsay's darkening expression and through the French doors. The garden room was empty except for fresh flower arrangements and family photos where we all looked perfectly happy. You're supposed to be playing nice, Madison whispered, at least until the reading. Why? They're not? Because Joanna's already called the realtor about selling Grandpa's summer house. They think it's a done deal. I laughed. Of course they do. Just like they thought it was a done deal when they convinced Mom to use my college fund for Joanna's wedding. That was 10 years ago. And I'm still paying off student loans? I touched one of the photos. Christmas 2015, the year Mom told her friends I was taking a break from family gatherings when really they'd stopped inviting me. But who's counting? The sound of heels on marble announced Joanna's approach. She entered like she owned the place, which in her mind she probably soon would. There you are! Her voice dripped honey-coated venom. We were just discussing the second home Rodney and I are finally paying off. Thank goodness for Grandpa's generosity. Fascinating, I said. Speaking of generosity, do you remember that time you needed $5,000 for your spa weekend that was actually a consultation with a divorce lawyer? The color drained from her face. I don't know what. Or should we talk about the text messages you sent me last year? The ones about Rodney and his secretary? Madison's eyes widened. Joanna's perfectly manicured hand trembled around her champagne glass. You wouldn't dare, she whispered. Wouldn't I? I smiled. But you're right. This isn't the time or place. We should focus on celebrating Grandpa's memory. The lawyer's arrival saved Joanna from responding. Valentine Rogers stood in the doorway, his briefcase a harbinger of what was to come. If everyone could gather in the living room, he announced, we're ready to begin. As the family filtered in, I hung back, watching. Mom adjusted her pearls. Lindsay positioned herself for optimal Instagram lighting. Joanna whispered something to Rodney that made him frown. Madison touched my arm. Are you ready for this? I patted my purse where the manila envelope sat heavy with truth. I've been ready for 15 years. Vanessa. Mom's sharp voice cut through the room. We're waiting. I took my seat in the back corner, the same place I always sat at family gatherings, the black sheep's designated spot. Through the bay windows, I could see Grandpa's favorite oak tree, the one where he taught me to climb while my sisters practiced their posture inside. Before we begin, Valentine said, I should mention that Julius was very specific about how this reading should proceed. Yes, yes. Mom waved her hand. He always was particular about protocol. Let's get on with it. I caught Valentine's eye and nodded slightly. He'd been there through everything. The missed invitations, the forgotten birthday cards, the gradual erasure of the daughter who wouldn't conform. Very well. He opened his briefcase. Shall we begin? Lindsay already had her phone out, ready to capture the moment. Joanna sat straight-backed, expectant. Mom dabbed at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I reached into my purse and felt the edge of the manila envelope. Soon, they would understand what Grandpa meant when he said some fortunes aren't measured in money. The last will and testament of Julius Perry, Valentine began, his voice steady, to my family, whom I have watched perform their roles so diligently all these years. I settled back in my chair. The show was about to begin. Remember when Mom tried to buy you a husband? Madison whispered as Valentin shuffled his papers. I did remember. 5 years ago, Mom had summoned me to lunch at her country club. She'd worn her intervention pearls, the ones reserved for particularly disappointing family discussions. I've found someone suitable, she'd announced over her untouched salad. His family owns real estate downtown. He's willing to overlook your creative pursuits. You mean my career? Darling, designing websites is hardly a career. She'd slid a photo across the table. Thomas is willing to propose within 6 months. All you have to do is act the part. I'd pushed the photo back. And what's the price tag for this arrangement? Don't be crude. But she'd named a figure, enough to make me pause. Plus, full access to the family trust, of course, like your sister's. Now, watching Mom adjust her intervention pearls as Valentine prepared to read the will, I remembered how close I'd come to saying yes, how tempting it had been to finally earn my place at their table. Earth to Vanessa. Joanna's voice cut through my memories. Valentin asked if you had any objections before we proceed. None whatsoever. I smiled. Please continue. Lindsay lowered her phone long enough to stage whisper to Joanna. At least she dressed appropriately for once, though God knows why she bothered. Girls, Mom warned, but her tone carried more amusement than reproach. Valentin cleared his throat. Before we continued, Julius left specific instructions about recording devices. Oh, it's just for my Instagram stories, Lindsay protested. My followers love family moments. I'm afraid I must insist. Valentin's tone left no room for argument. All phones must be turned off and placed on the table. Lindsay's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. But now, his voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. As phones clattered onto the mahogany table, I caught Madison's eye. She gave me the slightest nod, confirmation that she'd done what I'd asked. While we're waiting, Joanna turned to me. Have you heard about the renovations we're planning for the summer house? Rodney has the most wonderful ideas for the waterfront. Fascinating. I leaned forward. Almost as fascinating as those late night calls you made to your tennis instructor last month. Rodney's head snapped up. Joanna's smile froze. I have no idea what you're talking about, she said carefully. No? Should we ask your phone records? Before she could respond, Mom cut in. Vanessa, dear, this isn't the time for your imagination. You're right. I sat back. Let's focus on the reading. Valentine had finished organizing his papers. The room fell silent except for the tick of Grandpa's old grandfather clock, the one he'd promised me years ago because I was the only one who knew how to wind it properly. Before I begin, Valentine said, Julius asked me to play a recording. Mom frowned. That wasn't mentioned in the preliminary discussions. Nevertheless, he pressed play on a small recorder. Grandpa's voice filled the room, still strong, despite being recorded in his final weeks. To my family, gathered here today, I've watched you all so carefully over the years, watched how you present yourselves to the world, watched what you do when you think no one's looking. Lindsay shifted uncomfortably. Joanna's hand found Rodney's, but he pulled away. I've seen the masks you wear, Grandpa continued, and I've seen who takes them off when it matters. Mom's intervention pearls clinked as she straightened. Valentine, is this really necessary? Julius insisted. He didn't stop the recording. To those who valued appearance over authenticity, who chose performance over truth, you've already received your inheritance in the life you chose to live. To the one who dared to be real in a family of facades. The recording clicked off. In the silence that followed, I could feel every eye in the room turn to me. Well, Mom laughed nervously. Julius always did have a flair for drama. Shall we proceed with the actual reading? Of course. Valentine opened the will. Though I should mention one more thing. Julius made some amendments in his final week. What amendments? Joanna demanded. All in good time. He adjusted his glasses. Now, regarding the distribution of assets, I touched the manila envelope in my purse one last time, feeling the weight of 15 years' worth of truth. Soon they would understand that some inheritances aren't listed in wills. Let them gloat, I whispered to Madison. That's the point. She squeezed my hand as Valentine began to read, his voice carrying the weight of justice delayed but not denied. In the corner, Grandpa's clock ticked steadily on, counting down the moments until my family's carefully constructed world would crumble. The time for masks was over. To my eldest daughter, Joanna, Valentine read, I leave the sum of $75,000. Joanna's triumphant smile lit up the room. She squeezed Rodney's hand, but his eyes remained fixed on his shoes. To my daughter, Lindsay, I also leave $75,000. Lindsay dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, perfectly executing the grateful tears she'd practiced. Oh, Daddy would have wanted this, she whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Mom beamed at her two perfect daughters, then shot me a look that clearly said, This is why we follow the rules. And the remaining balance of the estate, Valentine continued, totaling $225,000. The room held its breath. Joanna's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. Lindsay stopped pretending to cry. Goes to my granddaughter, Vanessa. The crystal glass shattered in Joanna's hand, sending champagne across the Persian rug. That's impossible. Mom stood up, pearls clutched tight. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Valentine said calmly, producing another document, along with a personal message to my dear Vanessa, who never needed to pretend, who gave loans she knew would never be repaid, who kept her integrity when it would have been easier to sell it. You are my true heir in every sense that matters. This is ridiculous. Lindsay's carefully crafted composure cracked. She doesn't even come to family functions. I wasn't invited to family functions, I corrected quietly. There's a difference. Valentine. Mom's voice shook. This cannot be legal. Julius was not in his right mind at the end. I have 3 separate psychiatric evaluations confirming his competency, Valentine replied, as well as video documentation of him making these changes. Video? Joanna's voice rose to a shriek. You recorded our father's final moments? He recorded them himself. Valentine produced a USB drive, along with quite a few interesting conversations he had with various family members about their financial arrangements. Rodney finally looked up. What kind of arrangements? The kind your wife didn't tell you about, I said softly, opening my purse. Would you like to see the receipts? Don't you dare, Joanna hissed. Or perhaps, I continued, pulling out my manila envelope, we should discuss the real reason Lindsay needed that emergency loan last year, the one that wasn't actually for her children's private school tuition? Lindsay went pale. You promised you'd never tell. No, you assumed I'd never tell. Just like you assumed I'd never amount to anything. Just like you assumed Grandpa didn't notice how you treated me. This is blackmail, Mom declared, standing up. Valentin, surely you can't allow this. Everything is in order, he replied, shuffling through more papers. Though we haven't gotten to the most interesting part yet. There's more, Madison whispered. Julius left one final clause, Valentine confirmed, regarding the summer house. We've already made plans for that, Joanna snapped. The realtor's coming next week. I'm afraid those plans will have to be canceled. Valentine adjusted his glasses. The property has been placed in a trust, under Vanessa's sole control. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the grandfather clock seemed to hold its breath. No. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. No, no, no. That house has been in our family for generations. And now it will serve a new purpose, I said, standing up, one that actually helps people instead of just hosting charity galas for show. Lindsay lunged for her phone, probably to call her lawyer husband, but Valentine raised his hand. Before anyone makes any calls, you should know that Julius documented everything, every loan, every secret, every manipulation. He left quite a paper trail. You knew, Joanna accused, turning to me. You knew all along. I knew what Grandpa knew. That you'd all been performing your whole lives. That's why he left me this. I patted the manila envelope. Insurance, he called it, against exactly this reaction. What's in there? Rodney demanded. Truth, I replied simply. 15 years of it. Would you like to see? The room erupted into chaos. Joanna lunged for the envelope. Lindsay burst into real tears this time. Mom sank back into her chair, intervention pearls clinking softly against each other. This isn't over, she warned. You're right, I agreed, standing up. It's just beginning. I nodded to Valentine, who began distributing copies of the official documents. As my family scrambled to read the fine print, looking for any loophole they could exploit, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. For the first time in that house, I was smiling. Behind me, the grandfather clock chimed 3 times, marking the hour when everything changed. Grandpa always said timing was everything. He was right about that, too. Let's start with Christmas 2018, I said, pulling out the first stack of papers from my manila envelope. When Joanna borrowed $40,000 because Rodney's business investment went south. That was a private matter, Joanna snapped, but Rodney's head jerked up. What business investment? I slid the bank statements across the table. The one she told you was a spa retreat with her friends. Funny how that weekend coincided with a certain casino opening in Atlantic City. Rodney snatched the papers, his face darkening as he read. You said that money came from your trust fund. Rodney, darling, I can explain. Save it. He stood up, straightening his tie. Like you explained the tennis instructor? The room went deadly quiet. Lindsay stopped crying long enough to grab her phone, probably hoping to capture the drama, but Madison smoothly intercepted it. Moving on, I continued, pulling out more papers. Lindsay, remember when you needed help with those medical bills last spring? She froze. Don't. Except they weren't medical bills, were they? The receipts show payments to a private investigator, the same one who followed Randolph to his meetings with his secretary. That's enough! Mom slammed her hand on the table. I won't sit here and listen to these lies. Lies? I pressed play on my phone. Her own voice filled the room. Of course, we don't invite Vanessa to the important events. She'd only embarrass us like she did at the country club gala. Some people just aren't meant for proper society. The color drained from her face. Where did you get that? The same place I got everything else. By paying attention, by keeping records, by being the daughter you thought was too scattered to notice anything. I distributed personalized packets to each family member, years of screenshots, voice messages, bank statements, every slight and secret carefully documented. Here's your loan history, Joanna, complete with the emails where you promised to repay me next month for 5 years straight. And Lindsay, this is the text thread where you told your friends I wasn't invited to your children's birthdays because I was unstable, right after asking me to help pay for the party. Madison watched from the corner, her expression a mixture of horror and admiration. You kept everything. Everything. I turned to Mom, including the conversation you had with the country club board about why I shouldn't be allowed membership. Something about maintaining standards? Mom's hands trembled as she flipped through her packet. This will destroy us. No, I corrected. This will expose you. There's a difference. Rodney stood abruptly, car keys jingling in his hand. I need some air. Rodney, wait, Joanna called after him. But the front door slammed in response. Lindsay was frantically texting, probably warning Randolph about his exposed indiscretions. You had no right, she whispered. Actually, I had every right. Just like I had the right to be treated like family instead of an inconvenience, like I had the right to be invited to Christmas dinner instead of being told the date was changed. That was one time, Mom protested weakly. 3 times, I corrected. I have the screenshots of Madison telling me the real dates. Madison stepped forward. I knew something was coming, but this is nuclear. Oh, it gets better. I pulled out my phone. Remember how Valentine mentioned Grandpa's videos? He sent copies to every family friend you've ever used my failures as dinner party entertainment. You didn't, Joanna gasped. Check your social circles inboxes. I'm sure they're interesting reading right now. Mom's phone started buzzing, probably country club friends demanding explanations. She silenced it with shaking hands. What do you want? She asked quietly. Money? Position on the charity board? I want you to feel what I felt. Every time you excluded me, every time you used me, every time you treated me like a family secret instead of a daughter. I stood up, smoothing my black dress. I want you to understand that karma isn't instant, but it is inevitable. Lindsay's phone chimed. Her face crumpled as she read the message. Randolph's not coming home tonight. The truth hurts, doesn't it? I gathered my things. Almost as much as being told you're not good enough for 15 years. You'll regret this, Joanna threatened, but her voice quivered. No more than I regret every loan I gave you, every secret I kept, every time I tried to buy my way into this family's good graces. I paused at the door. But don't worry. I'm sure you can explain it all away at the next country club gala. You're good at pretending, remember? As I turned to leave, Valentin cleared his throat. There's one more thing, a final clause from Julius. More? Mom's voice cracked. Haven't you done enough? Oh, no, I smiled. Grandpa was very thorough. This is just the beginning. The grandfather clock chimed again, marking another hour in the longest afternoon of their lives. For the first time, I wasn't counting the minutes until I could escape. I was counting the seconds until they understood exactly what they'd lost. You're destroying this family, Joanna screamed, mascara running down her cheeks. Is that what you wanted? No, I replied calmly. I'm exposing the truth. You destroyed the family years ago with every lie, every manipulation, every time you chose appearance over authenticity. Mom's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She finally answered it on speaker, probably hoping to maintain some control over the situation. Bad move. Deborah? A shrill voice filled the room. Is it true what they're saying about Lindsay's husband and his secretary and Joanna's gambling? It's all over the club group chat. Mom ended the call, her hands shaking. Fix this, she demanded. Tell them it was all a mistake. Like you told everyone I was finding myself in Europe when really you'd cut me off for refusing that arranged marriage. Lindsay's phone chimed again. She went even paler, if that was possible. Randolph's secretary just went public on Facebook. She's telling everything. Amazing how truth spreads, I mused, when people finally stop pretending. Madison stepped forward. I have something to add. She pulled out her own phone. Remember last Thanksgiving when you all said Vanessa was too busy to attend? I recorded that conversation too. You? Lindsay gasped. But you're one of us. No, Madison shook her head. I was just better at playing along. Until now. The front door opened and closed. Rodney walked back in, his face set in stone. I just got off the phone with my bank. Joanna, care to explain these transfers? Darling, please, $300,000 to an offshore account. He threw the statements on the table. Were you planning to leave before or after you cleaned out our savings? Joanna crumpled into her chair. I can explain. Save it for the divorce attorney. Mom tried one last time to regain control. Everyone, please, we can fix this. We're family. Family? I laughed. Was it family when you told the hospital not to call me when Grandpa was first admitted? When you kept me from saying goodbye until he specifically demanded to see me? I was protecting you. You were protecting your image. I pulled out one final envelope. Just like you protected your image when you forged my signature on those trust documents 10 years ago. The room went silent. Even Lindsay stopped texting. What documents? Madison asked quietly. The ones that transferred my portion of the family trust to my sisters, the ones that Mom signed my name to because she knew I'd never agree. I handed the papers to Valentine. Grandpa found them last year. That's when he started changing his will. That's not true, Mom whispered, but her face gave her away. The forensic handwriting analysis says otherwise. Valentine held up the documents. Julius had these authenticated before he died. That's fraud, Madison gasped. That's actually criminal. Yes, I agreed. It is. Mom sank into her chair, intervention pearls clicking against each other like tiny handcuffs. You wouldn't press charges. We're family. Family doesn't steal from family, I countered. Family doesn't exclude family. Family doesn't spend 15 years pretending one daughter doesn't exist because she won't play pretend. Lindsay's phone buzzed again. The country club board is calling an emergency meeting, something about reviewing our membership status. Your carefully curated world is crumbling, I observed. How does it feel to be on the outside looking in? Please, Mom's voice cracked. Don't destroy everything we've built. You mean everything you've pretended to be? The perfect family? The social status? The respectability? I shook my head. That was always an illusion. I'm just turning on the lights. Madison moved to stand beside me. I quit, by the way, she told Lindsay. Find another event coordinator for your fake charity galas. The grandfather clock struck again, each chime another nail in the coffin of their social facade. Through the window, I could see cars pulling up, probably more country club members coming to demand explanations. What happens now? Joanna asked, her voice small. Now? I gathered my things. Now you get to experience what I've felt for 15 years. The whispers, the exclusion, the judgment. Only difference is, you earned it. We can make this right. Mom tried one last time. Whatever you want. Money, position, status. I want nothing from you, I replied. Except the truth. And now everyone has it. Valentine cleared his throat again. There is still one final matter to discuss about Julius's charitable trust. There's more? Lindsay's voice cracked. Oh, yes, I smiled. Grandpa saved the best for last. As if on cue, more cars pulled up outside. But these weren't country club members, they were reporters. Apparently, someone had tipped them off about a major story involving one of the city's most prominent families. Shall we continue? Valentine asked, pulling out another document. The look of horror on their faces was better than any inheritance could have been. The truth, as they were learning, was the most expensive thing they'd ever lost. And I was just getting started. The final clause, Valentin announced, establishes a charitable trust in Vanessa's name, with specific instructions to invest in causes the family has historically deemed beneath their station. Mom's face contorted. What causes? Arts education for underprivileged youth, mental health resources, domestic violence shelters. I smiled. You know, all those grant requests you rejected from your charity board because they weren't glamorous enough. But the summer house, Lindsay started, will be auctioned. I cut in. The proceeds will fund a women's shelter. Seems fitting, don't you think? All those garden parties pretending to support women's causes, and now it'll actually help someone. Joanna lunged forward. You can't. That house has hosted every important family event for 3 generations. Exactly. Like the engagement party where you announced your marriage to Rodney, right after Mom told me I wasn't invited because I wouldn't understand the significance of such occasions. Rodney, still standing by the door, laughed bitterly. Significance? Our whole marriage was a lie. Not everything was a lie, Joanna pleaded, just the parts that mattered. He turned to me. Do what you want with the house. At least someone will benefit from this family's legacy of deception. Through the windows, camera flashes started popping. The reporters were getting restless. We need to make a statement, Mom declared, reaching for her phone. I'll call our PR team. Already taken care of, I interrupted. Grandpa's letter to the press is being released as we speak, complete with documentation of every charitable donation you've blocked, every family you've blackballed from the country club, every time you use social status as a weapon. Madison checked her phone. It's trending on Twitter. Lindsay collapsed onto the sofa. My influencer contracts, my sponsorships. Will probably drop you faster than Randolph did, I finished. Truth isn't very marketable, is it? Valentin cleared his throat. There's more. Julius left video testimonials from several families, people whose lives were affected by your social machinations. You can't do this, Mom whispered. We'll be ruined. No, you'll be exposed. There's a difference. I walked to Grandpa's old desk, running my fingers along the worn wood. He taught me that, in all those moments you thought I was wasting time with him, he was teaching me about real legacy. By destroying ours? By creating mine. I pulled out a folder. Meet the first recipients of the Julius Perry Foundation grants. Artists, activists, survivors, people who actually make a difference instead of just pretending to. Madison stepped forward. I'd like to help with the foundation. Of course you would, Lindsay spat. Traitor? No, just tired. Tired of pretending, tired of watching you destroy anyone who didn't fit your perfect image. Madison's voice strengthened. I choose her side. The doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass, we could see the silhouettes of reporters. One last chance, I offered, facing my family. Tell the truth, all of it. Show some real remorse, and maybe we can salvage something authentic from this wreckage. Or what? Joanna challenged, but her voice trembled. Or I release the second set of documents. The ones about Dad's real reason for leaving. The truth Mom's been hiding for 20 years. Mom went absolutely still. You wouldn't. Try me. For a moment, no one moved. The grandfather clock ticked steadily, counting down the seconds until their perfect world completely unraveled. Finally, Mom stood up. Her intervention pearls caught the light one last time as she lifted her chin. What do you want us to say? The truth. For once in your lives, just tell the truth. I walked to Grandpa's grave later that evening after the press conference where my family finally admitted to years of social manipulation and financial fraud. The sunset painted the cemetery in shades of gold, his favorite time of day. You were right, I said to his headstone. They never saw it coming. I placed our old family photo on his grave, the one where I stood awkwardly at the edge, clearly not fitting in. Now I understood that not fitting in had been my greatest strength. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. The foundation website just went live. Applications are pouring in. Another message followed. Also, the country club board just revoked their memberships. All of them. I smiled, remembering Grandpa's words from that last day in hospice. Sometimes the biggest impact comes from simply telling the truth. The truth had cost them everything: social status, marriages, reputations, but it had given me something priceless: freedom from their expectations, from their judgment, from their carefully constructed lies. As I turned to leave, my phone rang again. An unknown number. "Is this Vanessa?" a woman's voice asked. "I'm from Simon and Schuster. We'd like to talk about your story." I looked back at Grandpa's grave one last time. The setting sun caught the edges of our family photo, highlighting the space where I had stood apart, the space that had ultimately given me the perspective to bring everything crashing down. "Yes," I answered. "I have quite a story to tell." The movers carried the last of Grandpa's antique furniture from the mansion while Mom watched from the doorway, her intervention pearls noticeably absent. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "We could still fix things." "Some things aren't meant to be fixed." I signed the final removal form. "Sometimes they're meant to be transformed." The grandfather clock would look perfect in the new women's shelter's entrance hall, a reminder that time moves forward no matter how desperately we try to preserve the past. My phone buzzed with another donation alert for the foundation. The auction of the summer house had sparked a wave of giving. Apparently, authenticity was more appealing than pretense. "Miss," the mover called, "where would you like the family portraits?" "Donate them to the Historical Society," I replied. "They're good at preserving facades." Madison arrived as the moving truck pulled away. She looked different, relaxed, wearing sneakers instead of her usual heels. "Lindsay's lifestyle blog just got canceled. Apparently, her followers prefer influencers who don't fake their entire lives." "How tragic," I deadpanned. "How's the foundation work going?" "We just approved funding for 3 new art therapy programs." She smiled. "Real ones, not just photo ops." Mom stepped forward, her voice strained. "You've made your point, Vanessa. You've won. What more do you want?" "Want? I don't want anything from you. That's what you never understood." I turned to face her fully. "I just wanted you to see me. The real me, not the disappointment you invented." "I see you now," she whispered. "No, you see the consequences. There's a difference." My phone rang. Joanna's number. I answered on speaker. "The divorce is final," she said without preamble. "Rodney got everything. Are you happy now?" Happiness wasn't the goal. Truth was. "Truth?" She laughed bitterly. "Truth cost us everything." "No, lies cost you everything. Truth just exposed the bill." I hung up as another car pulled into the driveway. Valentine stepped out, carrying a familiar-looking box. "Found these in Julius's private safe," he said, opening it to reveal dozens of photographs. "He kept everything you ever sent him: art projects, postcards, candid shots of you actually smiling." Mom peered at the photos. "I've never seen these." "Because they're real," I explained. "Not posed, not perfect, just genuine moments." "There's more," Valentine added. "Julius left instructions about the Foundation's future. He wanted it to specifically help people who've been silenced, overlooked, or forced to pretend." "Like me," Madison said softly. "That's why I'm running the outreach program." Mom touched one of the photos, me at my first art show, paint on my clothes, beaming at the camera. "You look happy here." I was, because Grandpa let me be myself. My phone buzzed again. A text from my publisher. "Final draft approved. Launch date set." Madison read over my shoulder and grinned. "Should we tell them the title?" "They'll see it soon enough." Mom's face tightened. "You're really publishing everything?" "Not everything. Just enough truth to help other people break free from their own gilded cages." The last rays of sunlight filtered through the mansion's windows, illuminating empty spaces where pretense once lived. In the distance, a moving truck carried away the physical remnants of a lifestyle built on appearances. "What happens now?" Mom asked. "Now? You learn to live without masks, or don't. That's not my problem anymore." I picked up my bag, the same one that had carried the manila envelope of truth that changed everything. Madison followed me to the door. "Ready?" she asked. "Almost." I turned back one last time. Mom, that thing you always said about keeping receipts? She looked up sharply. Thanks for the lesson. Outside, on the evening air felt clean, free from the weight of expectations and pretense. My phone lit up with another message, a photo from the women's shelter showing Grandpa's clock being installed in their entrance hall. Perfect timing, Madison commented. It always was. I posted one final update to my social media before turning off notifications. They spent their lives polishing masks. I spent mine keeping receipts. Guess which one lasted longer? The response was immediate, hundreds of messages from people sharing their own stories of breaking free from family expectations, of choosing authenticity over appearance. You started something bigger than revenge, Madison observed. No, I corrected her. Grandpa did. He just needed someone brave enough to tell the truth. We drove away from the mansion, leaving behind empty rooms once filled with perfect lies. In my bag, the final draft of my book waited to share its title with the world. The Daughter They Didn't See Coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's world. Sometimes it's about building a better one from the ruins of their lies. And sometimes, just sometimes, the black sheep turns out to be the only one who saw the flock for what it really was.